Free Walk TLV.
Free Walk TLV.
Discover Tel Aviv
like a local.
Welcome. So you're heading to Tel Aviv for the first time, maybe planning your trip right now.
It's an amazing city.
Absolutely. And before you dive into the beaches and cafes, we thought we'd do a deep dive into something really foundational, how Tel Aviv even began.
Right, because it wasn't always there. We're talking about its origins literally rising from the sand.
Exactly. Forget the usual tourist guides for a sec. We're going back to 1909.
Our mission today really is to unpack that story. The visionaries, the surprisingly clever methods they used.
And just the sheer will it took to turn empty dunes into the vibrant place you're about to visit.
Yeah, the sources paint this picture of a city built on ideals, maybe more than anything else, and some real ingenuity.
You ready for some pretty surprising facts, I think?
Yeah.
It'll definitely give you a deeper appreciation for the streets you'll be walking on.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's set the scene. 1909. What are we looking at?
Picture this. Basically, just empty sand dunes stretching north of the ancient port city of Jaffa. Pretty barren.
Oh.
But then, in April of that year, you have this key moment. 66 Jewish families gather on those dunes.
66 families. What brought them there? What was the dream?
Well, they shared this really strong desire for something different. Jaffa, it was bustling, but it was also crowded, maybe not seen as the cleanest under Ottoman rule back then.
Right.
These families, they envisioned a new beginning, a modern city, and crucially, a Hebrew-seeking city designed with order, hygiene, a fresh start.
A modern Hebrew city rising from the sand. So you've got 66 families, this big idea.
Yeah.
How do you even start dividing up empty land fairly? There are
Yeah.
no markers, no streets.
Exactly. That was a huge problem.
Mm.
How do you allocate plots when there's nothing to allocate from? No existing lines, nothing.
Right.
And that's where Akiva Arya Weiss comes in. He was one of the key figures. And he had this, frankly, ingenious idea.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What did he propose?
He proposed a lottery, but a very specific, very symbolic kind of lottery using seashells.
Seashell.
Seriously. He went down to the beach, collected 66 gray seashells and 66 white ones.
Okay.
On the white shells, he wrote the names of the 66 families, one name per shell.
Got it.
And on the gray shells, he wrote plot numbers. Again, one number per shell corresponding to the planned plots on a rough map they'd drawn up.
Ah, I see where this is going. Simple but brilliant.
Totally. So they gathered everyone together. A child actually drew the shells, one white shell with a family name, one gray shell with a plot number, paired them up.
And that was it. Your plot was decided by fate, by the shells.
Pretty much. It was transparent, it was seen as completely fair, and it avoided any arguments about who got which piece of sand. Imagine the tension, the excitement as they drew those shells.
I can only imagine. That's incredible. And this specific event, this shell lottery, that's considered the actual birth moment.
It really is. April 11th, 1909. That's the foundational moment everyone points to. It wasn't just about land. It was the first concrete step.
Making the dream tangible.
Exactly. And for you visiting Tel Aviv, you can actually connect with this directly. There's a bronze monument depicting the shell lottery right there on Rothschild Boulevard.
Oh, wow. Whereabouts?
It's near number 16 Rothschild. Definitely something to look out for when you're strolling down that main avenue. A real piece of history right there.
That's a great tip, thank you.
Uh-huh.
We'll keep an eye out. So, okay, the families have their plots of sand. What happens next? Was the place immediately called Tel Aviv?
No, not at first. The initial neighborhood they started building was called Ahuzat Bayit.
Ahuzat Bayit. What does that mean?
It translates roughly to homestead or housing estate. And the vision for it was very specific. A Hebrew garden suburb.
Garden suburb. What did that entail back then?
It was heavily inspired by the Garden City movement, which was popular in Europe. Think planned communities, wide streets, lots of trees, parks, a real focus on sanitation and a healthier way of living.
So a deliberate break from the dense urban environments like Jaffa?
Absolutely. They wanted light, air, green space. It was about building a modern, healthy Hebrew environment from the ground up.
Sounds quite utopian. So when did the name Tel Aviv come about?
That came just a year later, in 1910. The name Tel Aviv was proposed by Menachem Shenkin.
And where did that name come from?
It was actually the Hebrew title chosen by Nahum Sokolow for his translation of Theodor Herzl's book, All New Land.
Of Newland, Old Newland.
Exactly. And the name Tel Aviv itself has this beautiful layered meaning. Tel is an ancient mound, like layers of history, ruins.
Okay.
And Aviv means spring, like renewal, blossoming. So Tel Aviv, it combines the ancient past with the promise of a new beginning. Old and new, history and future.
That's a really powerful name, encapsulating the whole idea.
It really resonated.
Now, building this new settlement, let's call it, wasn't happening in a vacuum. This was still the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
How did they manage the politics of it all? Buying land, getting permissions.
That's a really crucial point. The land itself, the dunes, were purchased from Arab landowners. That part was relatively straightforward commerce.
But the authorities.
But the Ottoman authorities, yeah, they were generally quite suspicious of new organized Jewish settlements. They often put up bureaucratic hurdles.
So how did Ahuzat Bayit get around that?
They used a very clever tactic. Instead of applying to establish a whole new town, which would have triggered a lot more scrutiny, they registered Ahuzat Bayit simply as a neighborhood of Jaffa.
Sneaky?
Well, pragmatic. It allowed them to sort of fly under the radar, bypass some of the stricter regulations, and just get on with building their vision.
Smart. Okay, so this new neighborhood starts taking shape. Were there any, surprising developments early on that really showed what Tel Aviv was aiming to be?
Oh, definitely. Several things stand out. The street naming, for one.
Go on.
The very first main street they laid out, they named it Herzl Street. A clear nod to Theodor Herzl, the founder of modern political Zionism. But then the second major street they named was Ahad Street.
And Ahad had a different philosophy, right? More cultural Zionism.
Exactly. He and Herzl had some significant disagreements. So putting their names side by side on the two main initial streets was a really symbolic statement.
What kind of statement?
It suggested, a desire for unity, or at least coexistence, between different strands of Zionist thought, building a broad community. It's quite profound when you think about it.
That is insightful. What else was notable in those very early years? Anything that would surprise us today?
Okay, get this. Tel Aviv installed electric streetlights before Jaffa did.
Really? The little upstart neighborhood beat the ancient port city to electric lights.
Yep. It became a huge point of pride for the residents, a tangible symbol that they were building something truly modern, forward-looking. Imagine the contrast at night.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
A little bit of technological bragging rights early on.
You could say that. And it wasn't just infrastructure. The community fabric started knitting together very quickly. The first kindergarten opened its doors in 1914, starting with just 8 children.
Wow, establishing education right away.
And what's really cool for you as a visitor is that this same kindergarten still operates today. It's on Lillian Bloom Street.
No way. Still going after all this time.
Still going. Another one of those direct physical links to the city's origins that you can actually walk past.
That's incredible. A living piece of history. So, did the outside world notice this new town popping up?
Eventually, yes. It was actually quite a surprise, apparently, for the British Army when they arrived during World War I.
Oh, so?
Well, they had their maps, presumably based on older Ottoman surveys, and suddenly here's this quite well-organized, thriving little town, predominantly Jewish, just outside Jaffa, that wasn't really marked.
They just stumbled upon Tel Aviv.
In a manner of speaking, yeah. It showed how quickly Tel Aviv had established itself and grown, sort of under the official radar initially, into a real entity.
It sounds like the whole project was driven by something deeper than just wanting nice houses.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. The foundation of Tel Aviv wasn't really about, land speculation or economic opportunity in the first instance. It was built on ideals.
What were the core ideals, would you say?
Primarily the revival of Hebrew as a spoken, everyday language, a huge undertaking. Then implementing modern urban planning ideas, the Garden City concept, and fostering a Hebrew cultural renaissance, literature, education, arts.
So language, planning, culture.
Those were central. The visionaries, the founders, they genuinely believed in these things, and that belief, that commitment, is what powered the whole project forward so rapidly.
Okay, so connecting all this back to me, the visitor arriving in Tel Aviv today, what's the main takeaway from this origin story? How does it relate to the bustling modern city I'm going to see?
I think the main thing is to appreciate the sheer scale of the transformation. What you'll see, the skyscrapers, the tech hubs, the beaches packed with people, the incredible food scene, all started just over a century ago with 66 families drawing seashells on empty sand dunes.
Yeah.
That leap is kind of mind-boggling.
It really is.
So when you're walking down Rothschild Boulevard, maybe looking for that Shell Lottery monument, try to picture it. Picture the sand, the Ottoman context, the big, audacious dream these people had.
See the layers beneath the surface.
Exactly. See the layers, the Ottoman traces, the Garden City layout in the older parts, the Bauhaus architecture that came later, all built on this foundation of ideals and, frankly, sheer determination. That spirit of innovation, of building something new, is still very much alive in Tel Aviv's DNA today.
It's an amazing perspective to have before exploring the city, knowing it wasn't just built, but dreamed into existence from almost nothing.
Precisely. From seashells and ideals.
So, as you wander through Tel Aviv's energetic streets, remember that improbable beginning, a city born from a lottery and a powerful vision.
Think about those layers of history you're walking over, from Ottoman times to this realization of a modern Hebrew dream.
And maybe ask yourself what other stories are embedded in these streets. Perhaps your own visit will uncover some new connections for you. Enjoy your deep dive into Tel Aviv.
Free Walk TLV.
Free Walk TLV.
Discover Tel Aviv like a local.